Really want to thank our partners. Community partner tonight is Chester County Department of Drug and Alcohol Services, and you're going to hear from a couple of folks from their office. This is where you will find the video recording of this program, as well as a lot of other supportive information, resources in the county, contact information for the folks on this panel, as well as certain representatives from the county Department of Drug and Alcohol Services. And just a reminder that you're all in viewing mode only. So we're not going to see your images, even if you don't have an option to share your screen or to share your screen, or to be showing your camera, having your camera show you. So you're all pretty much anonymous, but we are so glad that you're here. And please, please, please go ahead and submit questions throughout the evening. We'll be checking that. And some of you submitted questions in advance, and thank you for that. Also want to remind you that when this when this program ends, one more thing. Really want to encourage folks to visit this page on our website, conversation.zone/parents. I know that we have a lot of family members who usually attend these programs. These are meetings held throughout the region. Even before COVID, we were in person in a lot of different places. And during this pandemic, many of us meeting online. This page has up-to-date information about who's in person, who's online, who might be doing a hybrid. Most are kind of Zoom meeting formats right now, but all that info can be found there. And this is our panel, but first I want to introduce you to Judy Hirsch. Judy, you want to unmute yourself and say hello? I think she's there somewhere.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone here tonight. Thanks for joining us.
So Judy is our program director, and she and I will be kind of checking those boxes. I just wanted you to have an idea of who all was here. So she and I will be sort of behind the scenes checking your Q&A and chat boxes, but I'm really excited to introduce these folks to you. First, we're going to hear from Kathy Collier and Kate Genthert-Siolek from the Department of Drug and Alcohol Services. After the two of them share a bit about their services, we're going to hear from Tim Roberts. Tim is a young man in recovery who is from Chester County. We're going to also hear from Mike Blanche, who is a clinician who works a lot in Chester County and has been in that region for a number of years. We'll hear from Louise Tovar. Louise is with Casey's Cause and also has a lot of history with the support groups in the area. And Marty Phillips is with us from the Care and Parent Support Group that meets in Westchester on Monday nights. And really grateful to all of you for being here. I'll stop sharing my screen now so you can see everybody live and in person. Okay, I'm going to start with Kathy, if you want to get started, and then I guess you can introduce Kate from there.
Okay, yes, my name is Kathy Collier, and I am the Prevention Program Director for the Chester County Department of Drug and Alcohol Services. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who we are as the department and what we do and don't do. And then Kate's going to speak to you a little bit more specifically about some of the recovery support and community services that we provide. But one of the first things I like to tell people is what we actually are as a department. Based on the name, a lot of people assume that you would come to our offices and you would receive drug and alcohol treatment. And that's not actually what our department is. We are what's called an administrative unit, which means that direct service doesn't actually happen from our office. We provide funding, training, technical assistance, and support, but the services occur through our network of providers with whom we contract. And we have services that range from prevention, which is the realm that Kate and I mostly live in, through intervention services, treatment, aftercare, recovery supports, the whole range and continuum of services. And we contract with a network of providers throughout our state, but mostly in our county for the prevention and recovery services, but throughout our state for the treatment services. And we provide the funding to support those folks who do not have insurance or are underinsured and wouldn't otherwise be able to access treatment. So in our world, you come to us and we help find the way to where you need to be for whatever it is of the service that you're looking for. And it is a continuum, but when I say that, it isn't like this straight line where you start at point A in our services and march your way through them. The key point of what we do, it starts with assessments to say, okay, with our contracted assessors, what is it that you need? What is the best version of it for you? And who within this network of providers is the one to provide it in what dosage and what duration so that you are getting the service you need. We pride ourselves in very much not being a one-size-fits-all kind of organization. And we are able to do what we do because not only do we have our contracted providers, we also have collaborators all throughout our county and community that support us when we say, you know, here's someone who actually is insured and therefore would not receive these services under our funding. Help us figure out where they need to be. So if you call our information and resource line, you will not get the answer, oh, I'm sorry, you have private insurance, click, you know, you need to be somewhere else. You'll then receive the opportunity to be supported by that kind of service that can reach you. As I said, we have this full continuum. Kate and I live in the world of prevention, and quite often people will say to me, well, prevention, isn't that on like the complete opposite end of the spectrum from recovery? Like, why are you a piece of this? And I always say that solid and supportive recovery is prevention. If people are living their full selves in happy and healthy ways, they're preventing a lot of the things that we as prevention specialists have to address. So I am super grateful that the county allowed me, when I came into the role of prevention director, to become very involved in the recovery efforts in our county and to connect with those who are involved, because I feel that there is no quality prevention if you don't have everyone in your county living their healthiest, happiest, fullest lives. And we're able to work with a variety of folks to really create this sort of network of opportunity. From our prevention standpoint, we do have a provider network that includes Be a Part of the Conversation, Compass Mark, Devereaux Advanced Behavioral Health, Holcomb Behavioral Health Services, and a few community coalitions that do work there. And we work with them to make sure that in their work, they're also aware of what are the treatment, intervention, and recovery options, because we recognize that nobody that comes to us ever comes in the vacuum of just who they are and where they are in their own life. They have their friends, their family, their colleagues, their history, whatever it is, comes to the table with them. And all of this continuum of service needs to be on that same page. And because of that, we were super excited to start some new partnerships this year that expand our services and expand our reach and availability to be there for the citizens of Chester County and make sure that they are getting what they need from the services our department provides. And I take very seriously that we are a publicly funded entity. So it is Chester County people who are making sure these services happen. And therefore we need to make sure that they are of the highest possible quality, that they are accessible, that they are available, and that the people who access them have the ability to get back to us and say, yeah, that was great and what I was needed, or you know what, this missed the mark and here's how you can do better, really, or at least do better for me and what my needs were, which is one of the great ways our community coalitions support us, because those are boards from various communities that represent 12 different sectors of communities, from business to student and all those different things. And it gives a voice to the people that we are trying to serve to say, here's who we are, here's what we need, help us get there. And with that, I'm going to pass off to Kate, who's going to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the recovery efforts and supports that we have going on in our county.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kate Genthart-Silik. I'm the prevention specialist with the Department of Drug and Alcohol Services. As Kathy mentioned, we have a lot going on in the county right now, although it looks a little bit different than it typically has in the past, with mostly everything being virtual. We do have coordinated events throughout this month because September is National Recovery Month. We really like to try to connect our Chester County residents with various recovery supports, initiatives, because we know that in Chester County there are over 35,000 people, it is estimated, living in recovery. So we know that recovery is possible. It happens every single day. And we want to ensure that we're getting that message out, we're spreading that awareness. So with that being said, one of our events that we've coordinated is with Be a Part of the Conversation tonight. We're so very excited for this. We're excited for the partnership to get this information, connect with these new resources within our county. We also have coordinated a community naloxone training with Chester County Hospital. That will be taking place next Tuesday. As Kathy had mentioned, we know that recovery happens with prevention. Prevention is recovery. We know that we want to prevent future accidental overdoses from happening. So we want to ensure that the community is trained on how to recognize an accidental overdose, how to respond, and then how to use the life-saving drug naloxone. Throughout that, we also connect with community resources. We go over some of the things that we'll probably be going over tonight as well. But that opportunity will provide attendees, it is a virtual event as well, with 1 dose of naloxone following the event. So a really great resource that we have. This month, we also have created a Recovery Month calendar. We really pulled together various events that were happening throughout our county, throughout our region, to connect the recovery community with those various events. Again, although everything is virtual, trying to make it as interactive and fun as possible, really getting people moving with the recovery walk, engaging people a little bit further than just the virtual events that we're having. So we do have that information, as Kim had mentioned. It is on the website provided. We also have pulled together a lot of recovery, virtual recovery events, groups, things that are happening in Chester County and in our region in our COVID-19 resource guide. That's an interactive resource guide. It is a virtual guide that's updated pretty regularly. So we encourage using the link that way to get the most up-to-date resources. And we're always looking to add resources to that guide. So if anybody has a group or event or something that's happening within the county or region that would be a great addition, we would love to have that. Please reach out to me. I believe my contact information is on that website that Kim had provided. So that's what we have going on in the county right now with Recovery Month. There's a lot of recovery groups that are virtual, although everything that's happening right now, it seems a little bit different. It is great, I think, the way that there's so much connection through virtual. It makes life a little bit easier that you can just log on to your computer as opposed to having to go out to events. Just trying to look, at the positives with everything going on right now. But I will turn it back over to Kim. And if anybody has any questions for Kathy or I, feel free to please reach out.
Thank you both so much. We're so excited to be working with you guys. It's really, really an honor for us. So thank you very, very much, both of you. Really great that you're here. I just put a link in the chat box, by the way. So if anybody who's on the line can access your chat box, I shared that link for the Chester County follow-up page. So recording of tonight's program will be there, but there's already a lot of information. Some of the things that Kate had just mentioned as well are listed there. So now I'm going to introduce you to Tim. He is our young man in recovery, and we always say you're the most important person in the room. Somebody who's willing to share their experience, strength, and hope is of great value to all of us. So Tim, we're so grateful to have you with us. So turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. Yeah, my name's Tim. I'm an alcoholic, drug addict, and a person in recovery. I'm grateful for you guys to have had me on here. It's funny, the timing wise, and as far as September goes, it is a crucial month in my life. I got sober in September. My sobriety date is September 11th, 2017. And it's I thinking about it now, I can recall those last 11 days in September when the purple signs were up as far as recovery month and all this stuff, and just feeling like it's so close, but it's so far. And to give you guys an idea, I know, and Kim, I figured out, I don't know if I go till 7:30, I really could talk forever about this stuff. So, I'll keep it to that. And just to give you guys an idea of, I'll tell you what it was like, what happened and where I'm at now and sort of what recovery looks like in my life. And before I do start, I will preface this with, I'm not special. There is no secret to it, which I searched for a long time. And as far as saying, when I say I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, what that means to me is that I will drink and use drugs again. That's where my path leads to, unless I do certain things that I've done, consistently for the past 3 years now. And I can say that happily, is that, I celebrated 3 years of recovery this past Friday. And life is good, man. But to back it up before all that stuff started, life was not good. It was, I had a rough go of it for what seemed like forever for me, and what I thought was going to be forever. To give you background, I'm from Westchester. I was the youngest of four. Grew up with a loving family that provided everything I needed, played sports, didn't have too many troubles fitting in. I was pretty good at school, and from the outside, not the person you would think would be caught up in the opiate epidemic. When I was growing up, I did not have any aspirations to be a part of that. I did not have aspirations to be an alcoholic either. And throughout time, I did start, drinking and drugging pretty early. I think my first drink was when I was about 11 years old, just with neighborhood kids, relatively harmless at the time, at least I thought. What was different about what happened to me is, I got sick that first night and ended up with my head in a trash can and calling for my mom. And what I can look back at now is that I didn't think, hey, that was a bad idea. I shouldn't do that again. I thought, we missed the mark, I'll get them next time. And, that would be the theme of my life for the next, I guess, 12 years. Throughout middle school, it wasn't as often as that. High school, it started to become weekends, throughout the week, stuff like that. And I ended up going to a state college and doing the fraternity thing up there. And it was a problem before I got up there, but when I got up there, I had the freedom to do it every day. And I did that. And for a while it was fun. But what my track record looks like is, I indulge. I say I should do that again. I say more. I take mine. Once I'm out of mine, I take yours. You get mad at me, I take some more. That bridge is burnt and I go on to the next person. And I was stuck in that cycle for what's, like I said, what seemed like forever. Long story short, I got kicked out of school. I came back home. Now I'm back home. And one of the things that I thought would change was, I'm getting out of Bloomsburg. I'll go back home. I won't be around. It's everybody but myself. I'm not the problem. I'm going to be the guy that beats the game. I'm going to have had a problem, but then, I grew out of it and became a gentleman and enjoyed wine, like that type of stuff. And I came home and it was worse because now I'm in front of the people that love me, who I've been lying to for years, saying I'm fine. And I'm doing the same stuff, if not worse. And from my understanding of what the disease I have, alcoholism and drug addiction, from what I understand, it's a fatal progressive disease. So what that means is it's going to get worse. And that doesn't just mean that it's going to get worse tomorrow or the next day. It may be stretched out over decades. But what I do know is that it's going to get worse before it gets better. So, I got in some trouble, legal consequences that led me into, a therapist who was in a 12-step recovery program. And And he told me to go to meetings and do this stuff. And I went and I didn't listen and I didn't care what anybody had to say because it had not gotten bad enough for me yet. And, I kept going at it for another 2 years. And, this day, September 15th in 2017, I'm about 4 days out from, using drugs and alcohol every day for probably 5 years straight. Granted, a day or two in, and my head's starting to clear up as much as it could in, 4 days. I've been running from a landlord, from my friends, and what inevitably brought me, I did go to an inpatient rehab, and what brought me there was just, my friends going to my parents and saying, Tim's at it again. The difference in this time was there was no difference. It was just like every other time my friends had come to my parents and, they suggested rehab. It's just this time, for some reason, I knew in my heart of hearts that I couldn't go on living the way I was, and I couldn't picture myself with drugs and alcohol, and I couldn't picture myself with or without drugs and alcohol. And rehab was just a good hiding spot for me. That's what I figured. I could go there and hide out for about a month. And while I was in there, and I do like to give kudos to it. And I do want to express that I know not everybody has the means to get to a rehab center, but what rehab taught me, or at least provided me, was space between the last time I drank and used and time to get to, a 12-step meeting outside of rehab. And I went to rehab and they started suggesting things like doing a 90 and 90. What that means is 90 12-step meetings in 90 days. They suggested I get a sponsor in a 12-step program. A sponsor is someone who takes you through those 12 steps. I've said a couple times now. They suggest taking suggestions. The only thing that I knew in rehab that I still know to this day is that I do not know everything. I'm grateful for that. From that rehab, someone had suggested going to a recovery house. Once again, I know that's not everybody's, an opportunity for everybody, but what it gave me and what can be applied outside of it is a little bit of structure. I made my bed every day. I washed my clothes every day, and I got a job. I had to go to meetings. I had to do these things. And, and slowly but surely, just by being surrounded, or what they call in the middle of a 12-step program, I start to build relationships. I start to recognize that I'm not right about a lot of things. The 12 steps, what they do is they take you through your past and present, address the things that, are sort of held up inside of you, and what drives us to drink and drug the way we do. Gives you an opportunity to amend those things with the people in your past, and follow a plan to sustain that, and help other alcoholics and drug addicts as you go on. And it's hard to say. Like I said at the beginning, I wanted the secret. I just wanted to know. I'd go into these rooms and I'd see people happy and like laughing and holding conversations and staring each other in the eye, and it's like, how you guys doing that? Over time, just by being in the middle of this stuff and just really diving into it, I run into the right people. I start to not necessarily learn the answers to the questions that I have going in, like, when do I feel better about my life? When do I make things up to my family? When do I when do I get a car? When do I get a girlfriend? When do I get all these things back? Because that's all I care about. The center of my disease and what it all stems from is I'm selfish, man. I think about me, and it's hard to see outside of that. But what I've learned is I don't get many answers to those questions, and it differs between every person. But what I do gain is experience, and what 12-step programs provided for me is, the promise that I never have to hurt from drinking or using drugs again. That does not mean that life becomes perfect. I have had a lot of friends and family die in recovery. I have lost jobs in recovery. I've lost relationships. I've had a lot of things that I would have pointed at and said, there's my excuse. But luckily, from taking suggestions from people who had done it before and sticking around long enough to hear people that had gotten through that stuff, I found the support that I needed and the strength that I needed to get through that stuff without, throwing away my recovery. And, I'm not alone. If there's anybody out there that is on the other side of the fence, looking in, saying, how is that happening? That's, what secret thing did he learn? Who whispered in his ear and he got it? That's not the case. I beat my head on the wall enough times that I decided to go around it. It's a spiritual program of action. So, I lean into my higher power. It's different from people, for everybody. And I lean on the people around me that have been through this stuff before. And if there's anything that I can say in this last minute, which I have been watching time, I have seen people of every creed, race, religion, sexual identity, mindset, angry or sad. I've seen people of all walks of life get sober and stay sober. And the other side of that, I've seen all those people, lose this thing. So I know today that I will not drink before the end of the day, and then I'll wake up tomorrow and try it again. If anybody is looking for some direct action to take now, get to a meeting, put your hand up and say, hey, I'm new and I don't know what I'm doing. If you need to find that, go online, type in 12-step meetings in my area. You'll find it, I promise. It is on Zoom and starting to open up back in person, but the opportunity is there, and there is a solution to this thing. So you are not alone. And thanks for letting me share.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. I know I have a lot of questions for you, and I hope that and we have one queued up already for you when we get to the Q&A portion, but I want us to keep moving through this awesome panel. Thank you. That was really generous and thoughtful. So thank you so much. Mr. Michael Blanche, a frequent flyer here with Be a Part of the Conversation. We're so grateful that we can turn to you for your wisdom and insights. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kim. And again, I thought tonight was awesome. And first, let me say, Tim, you did an amazing job. I've never met you, and your vulnerability on a Zoom thing. Talking on Zoom is like the most awkward thing in the world anyway. So like, you did it, you nailed it. That was such a great thing. So if I can translate some of your story, I will steal some of it for tonight, for tonight's purposes only. But I want to first say, Kim, when you brought this up, it's kind of like two people I've known, two entities I know, and Be a Part of the Conversation, Kim, and your organization, which I love and respect, and Kathy, Chester County, which I'm at, and I've only been out here about 13 years, but I still feel like a newbie, you know what I mean? So I'm still getting to know Chester County. I've been in drug and alcohol 25 years. I've worked at all levels of drug and alcohol treatment. Actually, I've been here since 2003, so 17 years. So when it comes to Chester County funding, and I think Chester County is an amazing place to get sober. I think the resources that we have in our community, and Kathy, the leadership that you guys do in your centers, in all of Chester County, we have great resources. And Marty will speak to it from the parent perspective. And Lewis, thank you so much for being on this panel, because we may not talk all the time, but I trust you guys are doing your part to provide the services for this very fragile, very complex disease called substance abuse that, Tim, you did a really great job of saying throughout your talk that, like, your own personal journey is that this thing called substance abuse is such a complex entity. It's not a one version thing that you get one answer and then everything gets wrapped in a paper bow and everything goes away. It is a complex subject that needs so many resources. And Kathy, so much of what you talked about was like, we need a village, and we constantly need to reevaluate that village and adjust and readjust. And with COVID-19, it's just brought to you by Pivot of 2020. We are all needing to really be aware of what we can do in our lanes of support. And so, like you, Kathy, and Kim, you guys know, I believe that prevention is a part of treatment. I really see prevention as a vital cog and an introduction to, so tonight, if you get anything out of this, know that Tim's words were amazing, that you're not alone. So prevention is about connecting the dot to resources. Prevention is about decreasing the severity of the substance abuse issue, to let people know that there is hope, there is resources, there is availability, and we do want to connect the dots for all the different levels of care, including prevention. To get, even in Zoom land, I've done prevention talks for high schools nationally and locally. And as National Recovery Month, as Kate talked about, here we are halfway through it. And again, we try our best to connect the dots for individuals during this time and staying connected and really reaching out for resources. So Kim asked me to talk about substance abuse treatment and where we are as providers in Chester County. And so in my practice, I have an outpatient practice called Therapeutic Alliance. We have a number of therapists at that center that see people on an outpatient basis, once a week individual, once a week group, and family services, as you guys all know, because this is a family ailment, so getting people involved in family. And about 4 years ago, I saw the need to get more involved in direct services for folks that have insurance. So we developed this program called Ethos. And Ethos is to help people find their own truth as opposed to a substance-induced kind of way. Like Tim again said multiple times throughout your talk, like the substance takes over and dictates his thought pattern as well as his behavior and our behavior. So getting people interrupted with intensive outpatient level of care. So our hub, our main site location in Westchester, we have day and evening programs and family programs there. We have a young adult track, we have an adult professional track, we have a daytime dual diagnosis track. We have a site in Plymouth Meeting that also has MAT services. So we wrap around clinical services around providers that are providing MAT from Suboxone, Sublocade, and Vivitrol. So we work closely with doctors and psychiatrists independently to make sure that we're getting them, the folks that need care, because a lot of times there's stigma upon stigma upon stigma. There's stigma just to have substance abuse still to this day. But the stigma of having an opiate dependency and needing care and treatment is such an important piece. So we have an MAT track, and then our Center City office, we opened right before the pandemic started. And then we all pivoted right to telehealth, and luckily BDAP approved all of our centers to be telehealth providers and all of our contracts with insurance and network. So we're a network with contract or for commercial, unfortunately, not all insurances, but they're all telehealth. And so we're finding a lot of folks want to come to treatment. So again, treatment is an option, telehealth is an option, as well as Tim talked about, meetings are transitioned really well to this format of Zoom. And yes, some people are opening up to do in-person diagnostic evaluations. We haven't figured out how to do groups yet with the CDC guidelines, so we're cautious about re-entering groups. But all of our family services and groups are all online, and we're just one center. We have multitude of centers in Chester County. We have multitude of programs that I work closely with and docs that are independent and also a part of services through Chester County. And there are a multitude of levels of treatment, levels of care. And like Tim really described, residential care sometimes is just to get away, to get some perspective, to put that stopgap and to get some perspective around use pattern. And then that intensive level of care of residential, sometimes we can get at other things to really figure out corrective level of care if they need a longer term stay somewhere to get out of the area. Recovery houses are great. We have a number of recovery houses in Chester County that we work closely with. So we provide the treatment, they provide the recovery house independently. And it's a phenomenal thing. Synergy House or Jonathan's House in Westchester are independent halfway houses, privately owned. They do a killer job of providing great structure and support for these young men and women trying to get sober. So when it comes to treatment options and all levels of care, treatment is viable, recovery is viable. And in Chester County alone, for young adults in the Association of Westchester, and getting them to have goals. As a young adult getting sober, I needed to have goals. I needed to have stuff to look forward to. I needed to have a future as opposed to just not using. I needed to pick up a life. And so a lot of our services are connecting folks back to being a part of society, being a part of their worlds and their families at a right sizeness. So recovery is about getting real and right with other people, getting real and connected with their community. And so again, tonight, if you get one thing out of this, you're not alone, is what Tim said 3 times in his share, because you're not alone, and families feel alone, again, because the stigma associated with it, the complexity of substance abuse. So again, I saw a couple questions pop up. I'll try to answer at the end at the Q&A side, but The other piece I do want to stress, and so often not mentioned, is 87% of young adults under the age of 32 have a secondary mental health issue. So a lot of times when we're talking about folks that struggle with substance abuse, we're talking about folks that have a mental health complexity. And that's where a good intervention, a good evaluation, to get them evaluated to make sure if they need sober, 12-step meetings work well. But sometimes they'll need that additional individual therapy or outpatient psychiatry that knows substance abuse, that will not prescribe or overprescribe or underprescribe. So when it comes to the complexity of dual diagnosis and understanding trauma and understanding a lot of folks that have been through a lot of trauma, they really need trauma-sensitive approaches to work and undo some of the harm done in inactive state of a substance abuse. So it's a healing process that sometimes takes years. Early recovery is 6 months to 24 months. Early recovery from a substance abuse is that amount of time. And so it's not an overnight process. Things don't get well overnight. We're taking away people's main coping mechanism called a substance, and we're expecting them to learn how to play nice with others. And like Tim said, some people's emotionally, sometimes they may be 25 in front of me, but emotionally they're probably like 12, and that's when they started using. So emotionally, we need to help individuals and young adults learn how to emotionally regulate, learn how to cognitively think through things, and learn how to physically do the behavioral changes to suit up and show up for this differential thing called life. So that's where treatment support, recovery support, is an option and is a viable option in Chester County. The amount of resources, I was so grateful when I moved out here, from the county perspective, from the non-for-profit perspective, and now Kim, having you come out here is phenomenal. So really excited to be here tonight. I'll take that time and say you guys are awesome. So I'm really grateful to be here tonight, and thank you for having me a part of this conversation tonight. So I turn it back to you, Kim.
Thank you, Mike. And we'll definitely be hearing more from you tonight, I'm sure, when we get to our questions. And since so many of you are talking about resources and connection, I just shared in the chat box our Staying Connected page. Mike shared with me a while ago, really amazing dynamic spreadsheet that's constantly being updated with meetings that are happening throughout the region. That's on that page. Podcasts are on that page. All kinds of other online resources. So as you both said, there are no two of us who are on the same path exactly, but everybody who's on this call now has access to so many resources just by being with all of us, because all of our contact info is shared on that page. So you have places to ask, where's the best next step for me to take? So I'm really glad that we have so many folks with us tonight. Okay, Luis Tovar, thanks for being here.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and thanks for having me, inviting me in to represent the Casey's Cause aspect of our community. Many thanks has already been echoed by many on the call to Chester County Drug and Alcohol. Our relationship has been established over 3 years now, and we have been a recipient through a memo of understanding to actually be certified in the training of other folks in the use of naloxone as well as the distribution of a naloxone. And we were doing this before there was a blanket prescription that was issued by the state, Pennsylvania. And we don't are charged anything from the Chester County Drug and Alcohol, and we don't charge to dispense it. We meet people at wherever we need to meet them at whatever hours they need to have us. That could be a young one that's coming home from school for a visit for the holidays, what have you, and they're a little nervous. So we provide that security of having that anti-agent for opioid overdoses available to them. And I guess I'll back up and just say that, Casey's Cause, sad story, but nevertheless, it was the catalyst for the Rumford family to establish Casey's Cause, a nonprofit organization. March 12th of 2013, Casey was found in her bedroom with a needle still in her arm, overdosed, and there was nothing her father could do to revive her. She had been showing signs of some behavior that was questionable, that was unanswerable, But because the Rumpers were not really trained in how to interpret those signs, and like many of us as parents, we've got 2 careers, we're up and around, lots of things to do. They were just flabbergasted. So they did, Andy, the father, actually started up Casey's Cause, and I'll just briefly read to you our mission statement just so that you have an idea. Casey's Cause is a nonprofit organization consisting of concerned parents, business people, and citizens tirelessly fighting the heroin and opioid epidemic that has invaded our county and our nation. We seek to educate our communities of the widespread use of opioids, substance use disorders, unbiasedly promote the availability of prevention, education, treatment, recovery, and support programs in our community for individuals and their family. And to that light, we range anywhere from 40 regular volunteers across 11 chapters, and we have as many as 70 volunteers engaged at the height of our events seasons. And those events would typically, could be town hall meetings, could be school presentations, could be joint sessions where we provide information, pamphlets and literature, and just talk to anyone that's in need of having a resource there that could, be a little bit vulnerable too, because a lot of our volunteers have been touched by a family member or in the recovery themselves to help out somebody who's wrestling with this. So as always, I'm in awe of individuals like Tim that speak up, that face their journey, and through that inner strength and through the love and support from his community and his family, he is well underway in his recovery. So one of the things that we provide that would directly impact our community is the parent support groups. We have one in Parksburg. We put on hold the Kennett Square for a time being. We'll start up again soon. And we have a grief support group because there is unattended population that have no recourse and yet have all this pent up emotions and feelings that it's very difficult to talk to another individual or parent regarding this. So we do offer that through a clinician, Kim Engstrom. And we do support and sometimes help chair the Grand Families support group. We're seeing that there's grandparents are ending up with custody of children. And it was unsolicited. That sometimes happens, and it's happening more and more. The statistics on that are staggering. It's something that unfortunately is gripping families that have worked for many, many years, raising kids, doing their jobs, having careers, and then to look at their golden years to be just slipping away to starting all over again in raising kids. So this is a group that's getting more and more attention, and we're happy to be involved in such efforts. We also, through our extensive list of resources, have access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to interventionist specialists that at a phone call are available to meet families where they are at, or the individual that finally says enough is enough, I got to fix this, how do I do this? So that is available through our 11 chapters. Our recovery scholarships. It's one thing to take on treatment, inpatient treatment. And for those that have been at this for a little bit, everybody does pretty good when they're inside. But it's when they get outside that becomes the bigger challenge, because all of a sudden the controlled environment, the access again to old acquaintances, just locations, events are triggers. And so these recovery houses serve a great purpose. And it will take some homework to find the right places. Not all of them are good places to be. Like many things that are taking advantage of a situation, it could get very much profit driven. And the ones that get hurt the most are the ones that need the support the most. So Casey's Cause has raised scholarship funds to be able to provide those that are looking for recovery house support. This is not typically that's supplied by or reimbursed through your medical plans. It's not part of treatment, unfortunately. So this has to come out of the pocket of the individual or the family members. And as such, we do provide a week at a time. We do more, but we do a week first. There is an application on our website, caseyscause.org, that someone can fill out an application, send it to us, and we'll get in contact with them. We have questions there that will tell us, what it is that this individual is looking for, and a recommendation, a referral, who referred you to, a clinician, for example. And we have a bank of recovery houses from either personal experience or referrals of people have said, this has changed my life. This is a good group. We don't endorse anybody. We don't, promote inpatient, outpatient, what we do, or treatment. Whatever path works for the individual, we will support. If yoga does it for you, great. If, vegetarian, whatever it takes, we support. We've even seen and advocated with some of our larger inpatient facilities that, this medical assisted treatment needs to be addressed. And we've seen some of the biggies turn their philosophies around in recent years. So part of what we do is also advocacy. We try to make an impact, change, because this epidemic, and it's not just opioids, it's substance use disorder, chemical abuse. This changes almost daily. It's amazing what these individuals, these young people, these people that have been addicted to heroin, opioids for 12, 15, 20 years. And I was amazed to even know that someone could be addicted to opioids and be around for that long. But they have learned how to create. The internet is so powerful. They can find just about anything there. And it's always changing. So our role, and that is of a parent for a loved one that's suffering from this disorder, it's a constant education process. And so we publish, we share documentation, links, resources, and we encourage parents as families that come to our support groups to continue that educational process, because it keeps moving, things keeps changing. We do, going back to our events and getting our messaging across, the town halls, we've got 3 car shows now. We've got probably the largest East Coast recovery car show in the country. We have as many as 600 cars at the Morgantown facility, where we had a couple of car shows already, and we've done them in Downingtown High School, and as far as Poconos, we have another one coming up in the Danville area in next month. And these are great opportunities to get car enthusiasts, families, and talk about something like addiction and the signs, behaviors, resources available, where to go. And this is something that has been very helpful. It's also very moving when you're at one of these events and someone approaches the table, picks up literature, you engage in a conversation, and they're just so relieved to be with someone that gets it, understands what they're going through, not being judgmental, not being instructive. Well, what you got to do is this and this and that. Everybody's got to find their own path. And my strongest message that I could give a parent or anyone that's involved with a loved one's addiction is really to take this inward and work on yourself. Take take some medicine for yourself. We learn that we're as bad as we've got the disease as well, and being someone that's been manipulated over time, and we suffer from this. And we need to be able to take a moment, frequent moments, and just learn to breathe. That's right, learn to breathe, so that you can get some good oxygen up to your brain, calm your nerves down. And when you think you've got to be able to respond to something that was negatively said or said in anger, or is testing the guidelines, the boundaries, you're able to retain yourself from blurting out or saying something you might regret, or doing something you might regret. So providing hope is a constant item on our agenda. And somebody had mentioned earlier about the mental health piece of this, and that's something we're learning more and more about as the years go by, as we learn more of what causes, why did this person turn to this. And there's a great approach that's being talked about more and more, and it's been around for a few years, but I think the link is coming around, that talks about adverse childhood experiences. I think it was Mike that said something that said, there may have been something before the drugs. What was it? And we're learning that trauma can have several different views, and that different view might be as simple as a divorce, a separation, a job transfer. And because of that, there's self-blame, there's self-critical of themselves. I'm not good enough because of me. And so all these things can add up. And trauma doesn't always have to be a war, something horrible happen. It could be something subtle. And as we have these conversations with family members, it causes reflection. And from that, there's a better understanding as to, this really is a disease, and we need to kind of handle it as such. And it needs a therapy. And that therapy could be how we approach topics when we engage. So these are just things that I wanted to share. There is lots of information on our website, and events are posted on our Facebook page. All 11 chapters do things. We work as far away as the Poconos, Indiana University with chapters, Boyerstown, and throughout Chester County and Delaware County. So if you need resources, if you need some help, reach out to us. And lots of times you'll get a live person talking to you about where you're at. So thank you for allowing me the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luis. You guys are doing great work at Casey's Cause. We'll share that link. Actually, your bio is on our follow-up page, so the link is in there as well, but we'll make sure that everybody has that link to Casey's Cause. Thank you. All right, Marty, my dear friend, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much, Kim, for inviting me to speak for the Parent Support Group tonight. It's really great to be here. And thanks to the Chester County Department of Drug and Alcohol Services, I now know that I am one of 35,000 people living in recovery in Chester County. So I thought that was a great statistic. I got into recovery in 1993, and I have been living in recovery since, but nothing was harder to me than when my son started to have issues. So my husband and I are both in recovery, and we have 2 children together, and they grew up in a house with no drugs, no alcohol. And yet somehow they found their way to drugs and alcohol, which is, a whole different story. But I found that I was really lost during that period of time. I didn't know what to do. As a mom, I felt like I should know all the answers and what I should do to help my son get into recovery. But we struggled. We both, my husband and I both really struggled. And it got to the point where I felt like I was just as sick as my son. He was like the hurricane, and he was standing in the eye and nothing. And I was crazy. I was running around trying to figure out how to get him help. And we did get him to a rehab. And at the family education program, we heard about a parent support group. And right away, we went to the support group. And when I walked in, I felt like I was just at home, because here was the first time that I could really talk in public about, I have a son who is an alcoholic and a drug addict and what was going on. And people were sharing their stories. And many times I thought it was a little unusual too, because when I first walked in, a lot of people were laughing and having a great time. And I'm thinking like, am I in the right place? But what I learned was these are my tribe of people, and these were the people that I really needed to be with. I learned so much, and Louise touched on that there's education that goes on in these programs. In the meeting that my husband and I facilitate now, we've been doing this for 10 years. My son did get in recovery, and he's been in recovery for over 11 years. But when we facilitate these meetings, it's amazing the relief that parents have when they come in, and maybe for the first time they can say, my son is a heroin addict, or my daughter has this problem, and everybody there understands. There's nothing like somebody there saying me too. And truthfully, I could go on about other things that we do, but that's probably the most important thing, is that we have shared experience and that we understand each other. And what somebody may not be able to talk about with the neighbors, or they, it's still, there's a lot of stigma around addiction. But here everybody speaks openly. And here we also get tons of resources. There are so many meetings in the Chester County area. We are so blessed here. I mean, it's incredible. And we have so many providers, therapists out there like Mike and different people. And so when you have a group of people all in one room, or right now all on a Zoom meeting, when we talk about, we talk about our own stories and what happened, what I did to help me. And, Kim will talk about what she did to help herself. And then we learn from all those things, but we also learn, bring questions like, I need to see a counselor, and you can get real-time referrals, and you can ask, what people have learned. You can ask place for young adult male who would be a good counselor, or where's a good rehab. And so in real time, we get to have experiences and referrals and share ideas. And I just, it was really pretty much saved me when I was, when my son was first getting into recovery, because it can be a very bumpy road. And, he was a bucking bronco. One minute he was in, the next minute, this was, he was out and he was doing his own thing. And so it's never, we always say, it's never a straight line. It's always a really bumpy road. But there are so many things that I've learned from being in a parent support group. In our group, we run it a little differently. We're called a newcomers meeting, but it's funny, people have been there for 7-8 years. But what we do is we'll share a topic, and then we go around the room and have everybody speak. And we really don't have much crosstalk at our meeting, and people will ask questions and things, but we'll answer that at the end. And but it gives everybody a chance to speak, because I think that for me, I'm pretty introverted. One of the hardest things for me was just to come out and say what I needed to say. If I'm a new parent and I walk into a room and I have to put my hand up, it's probably not happening. So we go around and let everybody have a chance to speak. And so if you are out there and you're a parent and struggling with issues with your child, and we even have people come in and just say, I think my son is doing this. My daughter is showing these behaviors. Is this good? Is this bad? What should we do? And then people share their own experience about what brought them into recovery. So thank you so much, Kim, for having me here tonight to share a little bit about what we do. And and Kim does her own parent support meeting too. So, and also I had Kim come to our meeting and she Zoomed in with us because she has the best resources on her website. I just love it. Whenever I want to find anything, I go right to the conversation.zone/parents and get on her website because she had up to the minute, like I went on one day and I was just like, I wonder if she has any, she had listed all kinds of meetings that you could do on Zoom, where to go. And this was right at the start of the pandemic. I mean, it was just amazing. So I would really check that out as a resource. It's been life-saving for a lot of the parents in our group. So, but thank you for having me here tonight, Kim.
Marty, you're the best. Thank you so much. Yeah, we met in the rooms a long time ago, and I'm just really, I love what you're doing, and you have a fabulous meeting. You really do. So thanks for your service. Incredible. These are volunteers, folks. A lot of these people are volunteers, spending a lot of their time and on the phone outside of the meeting too. I know that that happens a lot. All right, so I'm going to very quickly share my screen and go through some aspects of our organization that I want to tell you about. And I'm going to go pretty quickly here. So we started out, Be a Part of the Conversation started out 9 years ago. This is our mission. I'm not going to read it to you. You can find it on our website that Marty just mentioned. But we started off in a school district 9 years ago. We very quickly learned that we needed to expand outside of Hatboro-Horsham, which is where I was living at the time, and this is where my kids grew up. And by the way, I am the parent of somebody who's in recovery. I have 2 kids. My son celebrated 10 years of recovery back in March, thank God. So this was a year into that journey for me that I got involved with this organization, and you know, the rest is history. Here we are. We've expanded quite a bit. We're now presenting programs in 5 different counties. We have had a bit of a presence in Chester County over the last few years. We've worked with some school districts, but we're so grateful, as I said earlier, to be partnering with Chester. We very much started off in Montgomery County, but as I said, we've really grown. And it's really interesting. This almost is moot right now. Look at this map, because we have people joining us, not only in our online programs, but in these parent support group meetings from all over the country. We can have speakers from all over the country without paying for their travel expenses. So there are some silver linings that we're recognizing. Before COVID, this was sort of the impact that we had in our 9 years. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Since COVID, we've had about, as I said, 20 online programs, lots of attendees, and many of our programs, such as this one tonight, are recorded and can be found on our YouTube page, youtube.com/c/conversation zone. We've had a lot of views in these programs that have been posted since March. You'll find Mike, Blanche, and a few others who have been with us. A lot of different topics that I'll discuss in just a minute. Our programs are community-based, but they range. So on the prevention end, sometimes we talk to parents whose kids are very young, like K through 5 age children, grades K through 5. And we help them to understand risk factors, some of the things Luis just mentioned, protective factors, how to have conversations about a loved one who's addicted or alcoholic, how to recognize some early signs and foster, excuse me, healthy conversations. Oh, look, there's Mike Blanche talking about technology. Excuse me 1 second. Got a tickle. And we also talk about lots of controversy and confusion these days about vaping, nicotine, marijuana. There's just so much that we're trying to understand about this relatively new delivery system for things like nicotine and cannabis. So we have a program about that. We work with a friend of Mike's, here's his wife, Dr. Caroline Finkel, who does a great program on isolation and the impact on that young developing brain. She also has taken a pivot and helped us with a program online, which you can find on that YouTube page, where she talked about isolation in the time of COVID and how to navigate this whole different kind of dynamic. So more to come from Caroline this year, I know. We have a program for parents to help them with those teenage years, you know, parenting on your feet, how to recognize some of the challenges in your kids, and also helping to understand what needs to come next, maybe an assessment, maybe a further level of care. We present a mock teen bedroom. I actually think this could be really interesting to do virtually. We've held this, and actually we were at one of the Westchester school districts right before, it was early March, so it was really right before the pandemic set in. But I think that we're going to have some opportunities to partner with Chester County this year to do some online, tours of this bedroom and describe some of the things. We will not be recording that, but we'll want to do that live with some folks, so stay tuned for that. We also have programs that kind of move out of prevention and more into trying to understand substance use disorders. We have an Addiction 101 program, which really gets down to the basics of understanding this brain disease. We have, again, a program about cannabis because it is complicated, and we really like to focus on that developing young brain and how really this can be a game changer for a young person, especially with the potency in today's THC products. It's not like what it was back in, even we like to say it's not your father's marijuana, it's not your older sibling's marijuana. So yeah, things have changed a lot in this world. We love to talk about co-occurring disorders. So we have a program called Navigating the Maze of Addiction and Mental Health. We were so happy to finally present this topic this summer, being LGBTQIA+ and healing from substance use. We know that there is a strong correlation between the LGBT community and substance use disorders. We had some amazing panelists. That was recorded. We're going to be doing more with this, especially looking at the adolescent population, especially some of the vulnerabilities when they're just starting to address their gender identity and some other things, and how we can help foster some resilience for that population. We are obviously in a strange time with this pandemic, but I think most of us on this meeting know that we also are seeing a really huge impact on opioid use disorder, crystal meth, other really challenging substances, where we might be seeing an increase in relapse, some barriers to treatment. Perhaps we try really hard to make it clear that there don't have to be barriers to treatment, but it does feel challenging right now. So we are presenting this program coming up at the end of this month with Montgomery County. We talk about embracing the consequences, drug court programs, other things that are unwanted outcomes, but might be part of the solution. And we love to talk about pathways to recovery. Mike has worked with us on this a couple of times. There are some really amazing routes. You heard from Tim about 12-step programs, which are a lifesaver for so many people, but there are other pathways. There are programs like Smart Recovery, Recovery Dharma, outpatient treatment, faith-based, secular, other things. So also really great stuff there. Coming up, we have a couple of things that do not have any boundaries. They don't have anything to do with any specific community or county. We have a woman with us who loves to talk about parenting teenagers and young adults, and she has a really great presentation about the challenges of parenting during a pandemic. So excited to have her in just a couple of weeks. And some of you may know the author Sandy Swenson. She she's written a couple of books, the Joey Song, about her story with her own son who continues to struggle with a substance use disorder, and Tending Dandelions, which is a daily reader. And she has a new book coming out in November that she'll tell us a little bit about, but she'll be with us in October. We have other stuff coming up too, but I will stop right there and let us get to our questions. So I know that we had a couple that came in. I'm going to go ahead and ask Tim. Let's start with you. Someone asked as you were speaking, when you initially became sober, how did you feel? Were you convinced that life would get better?
And that's a great question. As far as initial recovery goes, and generally how I felt, it was a roller coaster, to say the least. Some days it felt like I had crossed through the gates of freedom and that my life was going straight up, and there were other days that I thought this was a mistake. I I'm wasting these precious years of my life, trying to get, it is touch and go. As far as with substance abuse, like, at least from what I understand of it is, my brain gets used to it. It's a two-part thing for me, is that not only am I physically addicted to these things, but I have a mental obsession as well. So my body says, I need this. And my brain, when I don't have it, my brain says, hey, do you remember that thing that we need? So taking that out of the equation, and like, I think it was Mike that had said it, that that's my solution to keep that mental obsession at bay. So in those first couple of months, and I was intrigued to hear that it's, as far as early recovery goes, it can be the first 2 years of it. Their mood swings were occasional, relatively frequent for me. And granted, you do start to learn how to cope with those things, how to not let them sway you into making decisions that will further harm those you love and the people around you. But what I do know, because I do work with a lot of people in new recovery, I take a stance of love and tolerance, and understanding that they are going through something not only mentally, but like biologically as well, that is, like Mike said, it's complex. So the hope that I had, and like I had said, is I saw people smiling, and it sounded like they were trustworthy, and they sounded like me, and they talked like I did, but they didn't feel like I did. And what they told me was that they did things, and over time it became better for them. And I did not expect all of the benefits that I've received from recovery. And they talk about promises, and just about all of them have come true, as far as not the material stuff, although that's what I was concerned with, but the freedom that I've received, the mental, there's a lot of things that mentally I'm not bound by my recovery, that when in those first six months, first year, were not directly in front of me. But coming around enough to, coming around and seeing people consistently showed me that not only were they not lying to me, because I assumed everybody was lying. I thought they met in the parking lot and said, all right, put your smiles on, let's go talk to these sad suckers. But they actually have something worth living for. And you hear it a lot, a life beyond my wildest dreams. And it's become something that I did not expect. It's expanded to a level that I had not expected in those first couple months. So for me, it was, and for my family, it was expected that I had a lot of ups and downs. But like I said, pain is the greatest catalyst of growth for me. So sometimes when it seems the worst, it ends up being, right before, a huge breakthrough for me. So it's definitely a roller coaster in the beginning. So yeah.
Real quick follow-up. What was the most critical factor to your success in recovery? By the way, they showed their congratulations. What was the most critical factor, and what impeded your path to recovery, if any?
Okay, so what was the most critical thing that impeded? So
the most critical factor to your success.
Okay, yeah.
And did anything impede your path to recovery?
Okay, so like I told you, I went to a recovery house, and that really was the basis of learning how to just be an adult male in the world, let alone an adult male in recovery. But getting a sponsor was definitely one of the biggest things for me, that guided me into the right way and has led me to, I still do have the sponsor that I had in early recovery. And he's one of my best friends, and he knows me more intimately than a lot of people in my life. And if anything, it's that one person that I'm able to, no holds barred, be able to talk to about it. As far as impeding stuff, little things, like one of the things I held on to was that, if my father has any health issues, or if my father passes, that's an A-okay for me to do what I choose. And just so everybody knows, that the first year of my recovery it was like I put a wager on a bet or something like that. And I was like, I'll give it a year. We'll see what happens. And And over that year, just by staying around my sponsor and you know, a 12-step program, I started to see what the benefits were offering me, and I preferred that over the other option of going back out. But you know, my father had a stroke in my first year. I was kicked out of a recovery house for missing a meeting. There was a lot of things that impeded, but the best offense in recovery is a good defense. Just being prepared for all that stuff and being around people that have been through it was probably the most crucial thing. Because you know, as far as trying to imagine, okay, well, if I lose a parent or a family member in sobriety, will I stay sober? It's a lot easier to see someone ask that and them say, yes, I did, and yes, I got through it, and this is how I did it. It's the solidarity in the fact that I haven't experienced everything, and I won't experience everything, but there's someone in recovery in our community and in Chester County that has gone through that and gotten through it. So yeah, I should have mentioned that beforehand too, is that all of my recovery has been based in Chester County and allowed me to go elsewhere. But and especially, I got sober at 23. And as far as for every age group, there's meetings for every person you can think of, and a community of people who care and want to help and who have been helped. So Chester County it's saved my life as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great question. How do I find help for my 8-year-old son to help him cope with his father's addiction? I feel like everyone I talk to says he's too young for therapy. I wonder if Kathy and Kate, if you have any thoughts about that, perhaps Mike.
Well, I definitely think that obviously the traditionally thought of talk therapy would not be what you would do with an 8-year-old who may not have the verbal capacity or, you know, the cognitive understanding to do that. But there are all kinds of therapeutic settings which are meant for younger children, whether it's play therapy, art therapy, equestrian therapy, sports therapy. It's just a case of finding which resource would speak to the way in which your child would most comfortably and naturally interact with another, and then they can interact around that issue. I think when people say, oh, they're too young for therapy, they're thinking of like sitting in an office with somebody in a chair and they're on a couch and they say, how are you feeling today? And they've got to be able to have the capacity to say all the right words. And that's not at all what child therapy is. And I'm sure somebody else can chime in as well, but.
No, that's it. Kathy, that was a great answer. So like, again, like, I don't think it's too early to have, because, you know, kids see it, they kind of experience it, it kind of sticks with them. So having an outlet to even process it, to, you know, some programs like Ashley down in Maryland, Father Martin's Ashley, they do a teen taught time, you know, so they do like even that talk to kids that young. So from there, from that level of care to outpatient therapists, and there are some that are better than others with it. So I think finding that right fit in a play therapist or an art therapist or a music therapist that Kathy talked about, so non-traditional settings are great for the younger kids. So that answers that question, Kim, I think.
Mike, while we have you, do you want to take that advanced question that came in, that first one? Why don't treatment centers learn to adapt when some people come to treatment, they come right off the streets?
So I'd like to answer that and a couple, because my name's Mike. Yeah. I like to try to shove it as much as
Yep.
Hi. So I think we're adapting. I think as treatment providers, we are constantly, chronically, always reevaluating our approaches. So any good providers are always open to feedback about how to reevaluate. And again, during this time with COVID and all of our centers having to go telehealth for outpatient, by the way, for the safety of clients, but connecting them. And so residential programs, I think, are reevaluating, constantly reevaluating. So one of the other questions they asked too was about resources. So if you don't have resources, so it's one thing if you have insurance and you might be underinsured or not have the full coverage, we connect a lot of dots for folks getting to scholarship funds or non-for-profits that could support care, like Casey's Calls or Step for Hope or other programs in Chester County that will help support people in recovery houses. But I do want to ping back to Kathy or Kate, you know, because Chester County has resources to fund care at all levels of care, including recovery houses. So I've had great success of that longer term piece, like Gatehouse for Men in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, I think you guys have a contract with, and other longer term care programs. So if you don't have insurance and you're a resident of Chester County and you can prove residency, there are resources available to tap them into. And I think, is Bowling Green still the point center for, Kathy, can you take this now at this point?
Yeah, and I did want to say that quite blessedly, about a year and a half ago, the state of Pennsylvania took away that you have to be a county, a particular resident. You simply have to be a resident of Pennsylvania. We finally got through to them that people don't exist in tight boundaries. They may live in one county but work in another, or worship in another, or someone otherwise feel connected to another county. So fortunately, the requirements to access our service are be a resident of Pennsylvania and not have another form of funding in an insurance format. So, but we do have points of access where you start the equation of, you know, where do I need to go and what do I need to do? And they are on our website, and we can kick that out to Kim to send out, you know, with the wrap-up page. And the conversation starts really with, who are you? What is your need? What is your resource that you already have? And if the answer is none, it goes in one direction. And if the answer is, here's my insurance, we navigate that as well to find the best possible place. And I really like to stress, it isn't one size fits all, and it isn't this linear path. Like a lot of people think, okay, well, you know, you start in the most restrictive thing. You're going to go to a 28-day residential lockdown facility and then move through the steps. That might not be the right setting for you. Other people think of it from like the failure method. Well, you start in the least restrictive, and if you fail out of that, then they move you up through more restrictive care. And that isn't how it works either. It's really what is best for you, when it's best for you, and the dosage and duration that is best for you. And so we do have a network of providers all throughout the state to try to find that fit. And it's deeply personal. What is a fantastic place for one person is not at all the place for another. And that isn't a failure, and it isn't a sign of you don't want this or you're not trying hard enough. It's just that this is an interpersonal, dynamic, ever-evolving thing, and you've got to be in the place that you need to be.
And then can you talk, Kathy, on this other question? So, and I'll just give my 2 cents, and I might pin it back to you, like the sober houses versus recovery houses. In my respect is that sober houses might be independent, privately owned, and are hopefully going to be licensed by the state at some point. Recovery houses, I think, are licensed by the state. Recovery halfway houses that you guys have contracts with that you actually support. So is that a
so
big...
there are a variety of things with house at the end of their name, and people tend to use them interchangeably.
Yes.
They do have different meanings, and so usually a halfway house is a stepping stone from your treatment to your independent life, so to speak. Not, it's a little bit simplified, and they have their restrictions and definitions. A recovery house can be a longer term placement, and they are licensed by the state. There's a list of approved recovery houses. We contract with several. There are also independent ones. And they range in all size, shape, form. It's much like finding your own regular house. You know, there's something for every budget and every style and taste and form of how you want to live. And then there are sober houses, and those tend to be more independent and are private in the sense of it's like a group of individuals that say, we're going to support sober living and our house is going to be that. So it doesn't necessarily have an actual level of care or a licensure. That doesn't mean the quality is bad. It just means it's a different approach to it. And again, what you need and how you need it is very dependent on where you are in your recovery, what your other natural supports are, what works for you. Some people don't work well in a restrictive environment, so they need something looser. Other people need to be in a restrictive environment until they're ready for that independence. And some people don't ever truly want that independence from it. They feel safest and most secure with others like them who have been through that path and with them. So they're going to seek this kind of clean and sober living arrangement onward. You know, it isn't a case of you're failing at recovery if you still need to live in this kind of setting.
That's awesome that you mentioned that, because again, like treatment failure, I think it's a bad rap. You know what I mean? When people don't get it the first time. It's you guys have all said it, it's not a straight line, and it's a process of going back and forth, and levels of care and levels of reassessment, and treatment begins with a phone call. And I don't think it ever ends, in the respect of, like, recovery is an ongoing process, and it's an ongoing evolution of adaptation and readaptation as our treatment providers need to, and as our community is reevaluating. So thanks, Kathy. I appreciate it. Kim, was there another question that came in?
Yeah, I wanted to throw this one to Marty. We're really tight on time, but I want to get this one in. Marty, how do you stay in your lane as your loved one works at their own pace?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, because, as a parent, or a loved one, you're really wanting them to get it. And so you're watching what they do. And so, for me, going to the parent support group meeting, and, go to Al-Anon meetings too, if you can. But I got in my own recovery. So my lane was my recovery. My son's lane was his recovery. And, I went to meetings. He saw, I was going out the door, going to meetings, recovery meetings, parent support meetings, Al-Anon meetings, and he was doing his own thing. And as crazy as it sounds, I think if everybody gets into their own program of recovery and they're moving in the same direction together, that's more important than you asking them, like, are you going to a meeting? Did you do that? Did you fill out your application for college? Did you, any of those things? Because, my son was 21 when he did get into recovery, but I think if they're 18 or older, they should be able to do all that on their own. And so how I kind of got around that is I told my son at a certain point, if you ever need help with anything, you have to ask me. And, if he was talking about something, I would always ask first, like, well, are you asking me for my advice or my opinion? Because that way, if he said no, then I just stay in my own lane. And it's really hard to do as a parent, to watch your child. But when you're with other people and you can share that, and I also had a counselor that I would ask. I saw a counselor for my codependency, and I would ask her, like, so this is happening. Is this okay if and she would let me know, like, no, you need to stay in your own lane. And it's hard, but if you have someone else to talk to, even if it's just another friend, it's very helpful to have somebody that helps you do it. So I hope I answered that all right.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Marty. I really want to respect everyone's time. It is 8:30, so we're going to close. But folks, you have all of our contact information. If you have a burning question, it'll be on that follow-up page, conversation.zone/Chesco, CHESCO. So please feel free to reach out. Every one of us, I know, wants to be of service to anyone who's on this meeting. So please touch base with us. Thank you all. What an amazing panel. You guys are the best. Thank you very much. I'm going to say good night. Check that page tomorrow morning for the recording of this program.
Thank you all.
Many thanks.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
Yeah. Congratulations, Tim.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations, Tim.